Well, I'm going to begin. So let's start. Okay, that's a definitive let's start. So hello, everybody. Many of you are very familiar to me, quite a few I also don't know. So let me introduce myself. I am Tony Hull, and I was the senior fellow, English language fellow in the Moscow area, in Moscow region, and then a larger area beyond which I traveled to, and I was the fellow from 2010 to 2013. And my region covered, as I said to people, it covered an overnight train ride from Moscow. So I've been to Voronezh and to where else have I been? Yaroslavl, of course. Oops, something's about to happen. Okay, I don't want that poll up right now. Take that down. So I think I've met many of you, and I also was lucky to go to NATE conferences much farther afield. So I hope that I know many of you are old friends, even if I've only met you once, or even if you were only in my audience and we didn't actually meet. Currently, I'm literally in my home in Bethesda, Maryland, which is a small, very close suburban area right outside of Washington, D.C., where I'm currently working. I thought I'd be staying on in Russia for a while longer, but ended up being offered a job at the English language programs, which administers the fellow program for the Department of State. So I don't work for the Department of State. I work for Georgetown University, which has received the grant or with all the funding for the English language fellow and specialist program that I know you are all quite familiar with. So now I'm working on the back side of it. I'm one of the people who is helping get everything organized here in DC to send the fellows out all around the world. As you know, they are on all of the continents, practically all the livable continents. And so now I'm mostly administrating, doing some English language teaching as a volunteer in the community with immigrant students, adults. So keeping my hand in that way. And supporting this wonderful Russian teaching community as much as I can. So with that in mind, let's get started. So my presentation today is Creating Opportunities for Critical Thinking, presentation I've been giving for several years now, and some of you may have already seen it. I hope there's some new material here to interest you and challenge you. The idea is that when you're thinking about diversity, a topic of challenging one to bring to our students, to think about, to talk about, that we certainly want to be applying critical thinking whenever we're working with such a delicate, potentially delicate subject. So we thought this might be a good presentation to fit into this webinar series. Just to let you know, excuse me, the PowerPoint that you're watching is available on my website, a very simple website, nothing fancy. And I will give you that link again a little later in the chat box. So, and also I have my email, and I'm always welcome to, always happy to communicate directly with you. And if you have any problems getting the presentation from my, my WordPress website, you can certainly contact me directly, and I will provide it to you as well. So take notes if you wish, but also this presentation will be available, and you can use anything that I share with you today, of course. So let's get started. This is a presentation that typically I do in person, of course, at workshops around, well, I've done it in Vietnam as well as in Russia, teachers associations workshops, and I've had to adapt it to this kind of situation. And who is that? Marina says she's in the picture. How terrific. You can recognize yourself from your hairstyle from the back. This was Ivanova, right? And this next activity works very, very well in person. So if you see potential in it in this format on a webinar, I think you'll find that it's even better in person. So I'm going to try to tell you how I do it in person. It's not a revolutionary method. I'm sure you use something like this, in fact. But so I'm both training you. Okay, I'm back. I guess this is just going to be the reality of the next hour or so, but I'm back, and so what I do in the webinar, in the presentation, excuse me, is I have this slide and I explain that we're going to be using a set of cards, yellow, green, and red, to indicate the participants, the audience's feeling about certain statements that I'm going to read to you. And you hold up your yellow card if you think that something is a fact. And you hold up your green card if you think that that statement is opinion, not necessarily your own opinion, but that it is in the realm of opinion versus a hard fact that everybody would agree upon. And then the third category is not sure. And not sure, this red category, can actually be interpreted several ways. Not sure might be, I really don't know what this even is, what this statement is about. I'm not sure that I myself could distinguish if this is fact or opinion. Sometimes it's like, I have no thoughts about this. It might be, I don't want to share my opinion. I don't want to share my response to this. This is too private, too personal. And that can be an option too. So we always want those three options out there. And this is how it works. People hold up their card as I read these statements. And if you notice, we have some green cards, we have yellow cards. I think you can't see it, I'm sure, but even in the background, there's one person with a red card. And indeed, ideally, very often, the different statements, there will be a mix of responses. So we're going to try this here through the poll process. And actually, we already started this to some degree. You've been responding to the first one, which I'll put up again. So the first poll, let's see if this is working. I'm not sure. Hold on, slight delay. If this gets to be too cumbersome, we'll do it another way. All right, so you've already know what the statement is. Today is Saturday, and indeed, many of you, 95%, have said that is a fact. Nobody has said it's an opinion, apparently. But quite a few have said not sure. That's interesting, very interesting. I'm not going to interpret these results right now. We'll return to that. But do notice that something as simple as the day of the week actually may have different kinds of responses. Okay, now I'm going to go to the next poll. Let's see, and now you should be able to vote. And the next question, let's see, it's not coming up. Close that for a second. Let me see. All right, there it is. Sorry for the delay. I think I've got it now. So the next statement is moonlight is beautiful. Is that fact? Or is it opinion? Or you're just not sure? All right. And you should only vote once. Just what is your immediate gut instinct reaction? Don't look and see what other people are voting as you vote. Your vote should be just your gut reaction. But please note how interesting that we do have a range of responses so far. I'll let people fill that in a little bit more. Moonlight is beautiful. Okay, is that fact or opinion? Okay. And I see some people are answering in the chat box. It would be great if you would go and put that response into the poll itself, because I'm seeing so far we only have 46% of our viewers today responding. So please respond in the poll itself, not in the chat box. Thanks. Okay. Let's see. All right. Yeah, but we're going to keep moving along, but I think you're all catching on now. Okay. A majority of those who have voted so far say it's opinion, but I mean, if I asked you yourself, would you say, oh, absolutely, moonlight is beautiful? Just be keeping in mind that people are having very different reactions to this. Okay, let's close this for now. Oh, sorry, think other people are still catching on. I have 1% not sure. Okay. Super. Okay. I see that people are, I think, figuring this out. Okay. There are 11 of these, so we're going to keep moving along, all right? And now I need to look at the next one. Sorry if this is a little slow, but I think we're going to get into the rhythm soon. Okay. Here is the statement number 3. Okay. I see you lost me and we lost my poll. So we're going to try this one more time with a poll, and then maybe we'll just have to give up, because I don't know if this is triggering some of the problems. Hope this would be a little smoother, but I see it's not. No problem. Thank you for the smiley faces. You're being patient. I don't know, the polls just... I'm sorry. That's interesting that the iPad doesn't show the poll. So that's a slight disadvantage. All right. We're going to try one more time the poll, and then I think we're going to go to the old-fashioned way, because they're not coming up anymore. All right. We're going to give up on the polls. It was a good idea, but I think we're going to give up. Okay? So there is another one. So I've tried to instruct you to use the polls. They're not quite working. So instead, please respond with the chat box. Now we're up to poll number 3. Okay? Poll number 3. The statement is, ice cream is delicious. The statement is, ice cream is delicious. So is that fact, opinion, or not sure? Oh, I see a lot of opinion. Oh my goodness. Oh, all right. Don't be swayed by everybody else. Oh, you dear, you're all so okay. Yevgenia, you had a fact with 3 exclamation points. Okay, a few more facts. Don't be. I shouldn't be imposing my opinion about this on you. Okay, great. And I would think, yes, for some of us, it is an absolute fact. And normally I would say at this point that I can only work with people who agree that it is indeed delicious. But that's just my little bit of humor, I hope. Okay, let's move on to some more serious issues, I think. So that's the end of ice cream. We're moving on to poll number 4. The next statement is, smoking is dangerous for your health. Smoking is dangerous for your health. Is that fact, opinion, or not sure? Lots of facts. Lots of facts. Okay. One opinion, one not sure, another opinion, a few more opinions, a few more not sures. All right. I can see this very quickly, and I can tell you that's actually a very typical distribution of votes. A lot of facts, but also a certain number of maybes I even see, not sure, and opinion. So keep that in mind when I ask you the next statement. Okay, next statement is, smoking should be banned. Smoking should be banned. Ala, the polls aren't working very well, unfortunately, so I'm just doing it with the chat box. So I see not sure, opinion, 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 opinion. Great. Okay, super. Opinion, not sure, not sure. Super. All right, so if you just think about these 2 statements, we had smoking is dangerous for your health, and large majority said, oh, absolutely, very, very strongly a fact. but to smoking should be banned, a lot of opinions. So this is about, in terms of critical thinking, that what do you do with the information, or at least the data that you think you have gathered about a certain subject, and then what kinds of actions do we take upon that? And that is not always obvious from the data itself, because there's so many other factors involved. Okay, let's move on to another one. Men are stronger than women. Fact, opinion, or not sure? Men are stronger than women. Let's see. Fact, opinion, not sure, fact, not sure, not sure, fact, opinion. Just, I hope you're watching this to some degree yourself. All over the place. The answers are all over the place, completely. Now, what's significant about this kind of question is that it is, way people respond to it is so full of cultural thought. It's based upon gender, and not just the gender that you are, because I've seen women say fact, I've seen women say opinion, and men vice versa. So there's always a huge variety in this one. Next one. Women are more sensitive than men. Women are more sensitive than men. Okay, I'm seeing from Yulia a very common response at about this time. It all depends, right? But the statement is, so sorry, I don't know if this is at my end or somewhere in the system that it keeps turning off, but we'll soldier on, as we say. Okay, I see a lot of variety for the last statement. All right, we're going to move on to the next one. Just a few more. Fact, opinion, or not sure. Cat is spelled C-A-T. Cat is spelled C-A-T. Okay. All right, I'm seeing lots of facts. Good. Okay. All right, you'll see the relevance of that in a moment. Now, the next one is color is spelled C-O-L-O-R. Color is spelled C-O-L-O-R. See one person saying, I'm not sure about any of these. That's great. A lot of not sures and opinion. Great. And fact in American English, right? So so many things have to be qualified. You have to start establishing your point of view. In this very simple one, are you speaking of American English? But imagine the extension where there are so many cultural differences in life. All right, almost finished. Next one is a serious one. All wars are bad. Fact, opinion, not sure. All wars are bad. Fact, opinion, not sure. Okay. Yep, a full variety. So in a live session, we'd have the whole range of colors, red, green, and yellow. Great. All right. And now we'll finish up with this one. Okay, new statement. Love is wonderful. Fact, opinion, not sure. Love is wonderful. I'm seeing fact, opinion, not sure. Fact, opinion, not sure. Okay, so you see once again, a whole variety of responses. Now, what are we doing with this? There are a couple of different things. Let's go back to our presentation. How in the world would we use this? Okay. And we're going to come back to the actual questions themselves, but I want to think about this kind of activity. And as I said, ideally, it's in person. Those red, green, and yellow cards are really very effective. Tell me, if you can, in the chat box, at what point, excuse me, that's a mistake in the slide, I apologize. At what point during a course, during a lesson, could you use this technique? with the red, green, yellow cards ideally, or maybe a poll if you're doing something online, of course. Where and how, or when would you use this technique? Warming up, such as we're doing at the beginning, a pre-reading. Okay. I see beginning of the lesson. Okay. And here I have something, exit ticket. Yep. For providing discussions. Absolutely. You know, when we talk about how do we keep our lesson plan, have some variety in our lesson plan, especially if you've just been having a really serious discussion, you need a break from that serious, lots of speaking activity. So it can be a mid lesson process. Initiate debates. Super. Okay. A beginning of a new topic. And that's primarily what I'm thinking of this can be used for, depending upon how you've designed your syllabus. Okay. Checking comprehension, absolutely. This basic technique is great for checking comprehension. Okay. All right, super, thank you very much. So I primarily think of it as, or the way I've been presenting it here, is probably one, to train students into the technique itself. So you always have to train them in how to do it. And second, to introduce a certain topic in perhaps a playful way, but depending upon the topic, also a way to perhaps introduce slowly what's going to be more controversial, just to help students think about the topic before they jump in and have to discuss or verbalize what they feel about it. This way they can express their feelings or their thoughts about it without having to commit in a very linguistic way, language way. So let's just look at these briefly again. So I had today is Saturday. What should have been a very simple fact kind of statement turned out to have some variety. It depends probably, especially in your country, where you are located. You have so many time zones. I imagine very possibly some of you, it may actually be Sunday. I'm not sure. And then there are some places on the world where it might even still be, not sure about this. Is it Friday? Maybe not yet. But sometimes it really does depend. Moonlight is beautiful. Ice cream is delicious. This helps to point out that whenever you add any of these wonderful adjectives, it becomes almost by definition. Hi, everybody, back again. So we'll come back to the issue of how important it is with critical thinking that you're gathering information, you're probably forming some evaluation of it, but from that are going to come your actions, and the actions that you take on that information is very important because you have to first have done the critical thinking before you take the actions. Men are stronger than women. Women are more sensitive than men. Very cultural. Two very obvious things, and yet once again, this very simple cultural difference or linguistic difference for color. And then all wars are bad. Such a hot topic in this day and age, of course, always through ages. And love is wonderful. Even love is wonderful. There was such a variety of answers, and I find that it's lovely to do this in a live setting. Many young people say, you know, they always raise that that fact question because they haven't experienced yet, or they're in the throes of their first love. And the older we get, the more perhaps wise we are about our answer to that, and circumspect. Okay. So I'd like to test this and just see if we can't have you all practice this a little bit. So I'd like you to practice creating your own. All right, so let's first start with some fact statements. I had a lot of fun and over the years changed these to get the kinds of variety of responses that I expected and hoped to receive. Ideally, I think in critical thinking, you're trying to open your students' minds to the idea that there's always going to be a variety of opinions about almost anything in life, or reactions. So can we work together to think about some other fact statements. So I thought today is Saturday was a fact statement. What else could it be? The sun is bigger than the earth. Excellent. One head is better than one, or two. One head is, I'm not sure. Okay. Sky is blue. Interesting. Ice is cold. That's wonderful. I suppose almost everybody on the planet knows ice, but I suppose we might be in a place where it's not so well known. There is weather on the earth. Interesting. It's interesting that there's so many climate and weather related fact statements, as if we think that that may be the only thing in the world that we could all agree on. 2 and 2 is 4. Mathematics. Okay. Chocolate is sweet. That's good. That is a descriptive without necessarily being a subjective adjective. Okay. Russia is very diverse to bring us into our topic today. Absolutely. Excellent. I really like that one. It's cold outside. Well, that would be very much of a relative thing, wouldn't it, depending upon where you are. Oh, we have a very hard science one. If we heat the water to 100 degrees, it boils. Okay. Blood is red. Interesting. Okay. All right. Russia is the largest country in the world, right? Books are the food for brain. Well, I think many of us today would say that's a fact, but perhaps that's not true, especially in a day and age when not so many people are reading. No, excuse me, gonna take some water. Oh my, Olga, I think maybe you're already trying to push us into some hard critical thinking action. The USA is a great power. Interesting. I would like to see a poll on that one. Even the word great, of course, has several interpretations in English. So what does that mean exactly? Okay, Russia is a great country. Same thing. I mean, even a word, and this is a good lesson for students. What does great mean anyway? Okay. All right, good. Let's move on. So, or maybe you already have, some that you expect to be opinion questions. Opinion statements, I mean. Jazz is the best music in the world. Super. Jazz, that's a really good one to start it off. So opinion statements where you're expecting probably people to vote opinion, and they have to separate themselves from their own opinion to some degree. Laughter can be sad. Oh, that's wonderful. All teachers are kind. Computer is useful. Super. That's a great one. Right. Especially because these are statements that people sort of throw out as if everyone would agree to this. And in fact, there probably is a lot of opinion involved in your response to this. Cats are better than dogs. Always, any cat and dog statement is good. A good one to train students to be thinking about how it's very much a matter of opinion. Brad Pitt, this is important because for your students, you need to be able to give them examples that are relevant in their lives, that they know the personality, so it needs to be culturally pertinent in their own worlds. Languages are important for our life. Really good one for you if you're working, of course, with teacher trainees. And well, I guess everybody is if we stop and think about Sorry, I know this is very frustrating to you, but just a minute of lost time, or a few seconds of lost time. Teachers never go on strike. Okay, I'm not sure. That's definitely not true. So now we're looking at not sure statements, things where we think students are really, or participants will have to, feel like they'd rather not say for some reason. Internet is more popular with young people. Well, that's a really good one. And maybe this leads us into why would people be hesitant? All right, because you want more data. you know, you need to have the data to support either that it's an opinion or fact. Um, Money is better than friendship. Autumn is the best season. Yeah, well, very often, and this is what I learned in doing it, I often thought it would be a very clear opinion or fact for people, but some people would, for whatever reason, they just couldn't even discern. And maybe it's more that they had to think more about the statement before they would even be willing to say that's just opinion. Young people can't live without phones. Mostly what I'm seeing here is a really great number of topics. And whether or not they would fall into fact, opinion, or not sure is almost irrelevant. It's mostly about, as you said, as you indicated in your response to my earlier question of how and when you would use these, a great way to introduce a topic in a very simple way, in a very simple, direct way that doesn't involve students having to immediately express an opinion or thought about it. So let's move on from there. So thank you very much. I hope you've all seen some of the great topics that people are sharing, because I think they'll feed into more discussion that we'll have as we go along. So let's move along, and we're going to review now what being a critical thinker is. And I'm sure many of you are familiar with Bloom's taxonomy, but we're still going to review it a little bit today because not everybody does. And what I do find also is if you do know about Bloom's taxonomy, it is from a course that you took 10 or 15 years ago, and it is worth looking back at again. So we're going to move into Bloom's taxonomy, but first we're just going to think a little bit about what a critical thinker is, who a critical thinker is, and what he or she does. So a critical thinker identifies, analyzes, and evaluates issues. A critical thinker collects relevant data, and this is really important that it's relevant, especially in the day and age of internet, when students go out and they do a keyword search and tons of information comes at them, and not all of it is relevant, and training them to discern the difference is really important. A critical thinker looks at questions and answers from multiple viewpoints, and that's largely what this activity that we've just finished is all about. It helps to really put that out front, the importance of seeing that people have different ideas about all kinds of issues. A critical thinker recognizes and moves beyond assumptions and personal biases. One of the hardest things in life, I think, where we see that in everyday life today. The activity we've just done helps with that first part of recognizing one's own assumptions and personal biases. Moving beyond, that's much harder, and that takes a lot more work, and that's part of what we'll be looking at as we go along today. A critical thinker formulates and presents persuasive reasons in support of conclusions. And again, this comes back to both issues of the internet, because as I tell students, that you read it on the internet is simply not a good enough reason to claim any opinion or fact as being a fact. Nor is it enough to say, my mother said so, nor is it enough to say, my teacher said so. You need to be able to formulate and present persuasive reasons using all kinds of other well-collected data. A critical thinker makes reasonable decisions about what to believe and what to do, right? And that's what we're leading up to, decisions or being able to having collected data, analyzing, evaluating it, and then reaching one's own conclusions about what one believes and then what to do about it. And that's what the smoking set of questions or statements is about, right? That we might all agree that it's going to hurt your lungs and might lead to horrible health problems, but what to do about that, individually as well as collectively, nationally, worldwide. And then finally, a critical thinker thinks for himself or herself. So important when we're dealing with young people who have so many people feeding them opinions and telling them what to do. And some of that's very important. It's part of being a young person and learning from other people, but also at some time being ready to think for him or herself. So some of these things that we're seeing here, we actually touch upon in this very simple activity we've just done. So we have Sorry. Okay, am I back? Okay. Um, and thinking for him or herself. And I think that's in a way the most valuable part of this first activity, that especially when we're doing it live with the red and with the little cards, being able to think right in the moment for him or herself, there's just is the, the greatest value of that simple activity. Okay. So I said we're going to move on to Bloom's taxonomy and do a quick review of that. And so here we have it. This is the Bloom's revised taxonomy of cognitive behavior, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with, and we're just going to do a quick review of it. So as you can see, I don't know if it's showing up on, we have the lower order, where we have simple tasks, concrete tasks, remember, understand, apply. Doesn't mean they're necessarily easy, especially when we're dealing with language learning as well as simple cognitive content learning. And then we have higher order, analyze, evaluate, and create. So this is the Bloom's taxonomy of cognitive behavior, in case you have forgotten or didn't know. Benjamin Bloom was an educator in the United States, and in 1956, he did a very large study, and it was based mostly about, it wasn't classroom teaching, it was about assessment. And he looked at assessment in the United States and discerned through his data collection that most of the testing in the United States was only testing at the lower order, remembering, understanding, some applying. And he determined and that this was a great waste of cognitive power, and that we really needed to be engaging our students through assessment in analyzing, evaluating, and creating. Though, even as I say that, I need to go on to the fact that, in fact, he initially had the order somewhat differently, and we're going to look at that again in a second. But just to finish, sort of to bring this up to date, so Bloom put this out into the world. He was talking mostly about assessment, but people said, wow, this is such a great way of thinking about education and learning, and obviously applied it then more into curriculum building, syllabus building, lesson building, task building, exercise building, that you can take this and think of it at pretty much all levels of the educational process. As I said, and I don't know if you can see this on your slides, but in fact, his original taxonomy had knowledge, comprehension, application, analysis, and then synthesis and evaluation at the top, which makes sense because, as I said, his study was about assessment. However, over the years, a number of people have looked at it again, and so has he, and realized that we don't want to think of evaluating as the final goal. We think mostly of creating as the final goal, being able to take what you've learned and create something wonderful and new or important or significant and relevant from that entire learning experience. So we now have remembering, understanding, applying, analyzing, evaluating, and then creating. Personally, I'm sorry to have seen synthesis gone from this new way of thinking about it. I understand that they're seeing a parallel between synthesis and creating, but I love the word synthesis. And I think also it emphasizes that from the process, you've learned a little bit of this, and you've learned this, and you've learned this, and this, and you've gathered this data and this experience, these many different kinds of experience. And hopefully this is also a lot of collaborative learning. And therefore, the synthesis part is really important in moving to that highest order of cognitive behavior. Don't know that creating reflects that quite as well, but creating is, of course, a wonderful word and a wonderful goal. So we have this new Bloom's taxonomy, revised, with creating as that ultimate goal. If you Google this, if you Google Bloom's taxonomy, you'll see that people have been finding different ways of stacking the various layers of cognitive behavior. So this is a nice one, with creating, evaluating, and analyzing at the top. My first initial reaction was, oh, that's cool, but then I have to back off from it. I'm not sure I do like this particular illustration, because in fact it's so important that you analyze before you move into evaluate. and evaluate probably before you move into creating. So I'm not sure I actually ascribe to this particular version of it. Okay. I'm not seeing, I'm just wondering, I hope everybody can, yes, okay. Didn't see much response yet, so I wasn't sure. And then this, we have this pie representation, which is interesting, but doesn't fully represent it either. No picture can probably really demonstrate the complicated process that goes into being a truly critical thinking person, and also that all of your to take you need to take steps before you move to the higher levels. So we're going to do some very quick practice. I'm going to move along because I know we're losing a little bit of time with this technical delays. So just remember, we have this hierarchy in the traditional way of thinking of it with the pyramid of remember, understand, apply, evaluate, and create. And what we're going to do is a very quick activity to test a little bit what activities you think fit into different layers of the taxonomy. So when we're designing class activities and assessment questions, we need to think about which level of Bloom's taxonomy we as teachers are activating. Okay. So I'm going to give you a table of different words, and you're going to look at the words and decide where each task, each word is a task, would most likely be performed in Bloom's taxonomy. Okay? Note, there may be more than one right answer, and we'll discuss a little bit why as we go along. So let's give it a try. Here are the words we're going to try to place in the taxonomy: judge, label, complete, investigate, imagine, translate, design, prioritize, illustrate, categorize, predict, and match. Okay? Some of them extremely typical for language learning, different kinds of activities, and others maybe or maybe not you're actively or consciously using. So where are we going to put them in? And what we're going to do is I'm going to ask you to do it step by step. So we look at this. So remember, which of these 10 words would you say represent remembering? Which of these are remember? Okay, label perhaps. See some imagine, label, translate, label. Okay, match. Okay, all right, and I'm expecting to see a variety of answers. All right, good. All right, stop that. Let's look at understand, right? And try to imagine what is the difference between simply remembering and understanding. You can remember how to spell C-A-T. Do you understand what C-A-T is? Is it Koshka? Is it something else? Okay. Translate. All right. Interesting, because so many of you initially had thought remembering was translate, but now I think you're maybe the same people, I don't know, but you're seeing that actually to translate you certainly need to understand. Or do you? Maybe you're just, well, I think you do, right? Okay. Imagine. All right. Remember that, those of you who said imagine, I think that's very, it's a little challenging, because as you'll see in a moment. Design. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Apply. All right. So I think these three things are what we do in language classrooms all the time. We're teaching for remembering, understanding, and applying, and testing for remembering, understanding, and applying all the time. It's pretty much the meat and potatoes of language teaching. Complete. Yes. Exactly. We're always completing tables and forms and surveys, etc. Designing, okay. Yes. Okay, super. All right. Seeing a lot of the different answers, but I think we could very easily argue for all of those. Let's look at analyze. Now remember, we're now at that higher level of cognitive behavior, more complex thinking we're expecting at this level. So now analyze, please. Okay. We've got judge and investigate. Interesting that many of you are saying judge. I'm glad you're saying judge, actually, because I think we're going to have to argue that judge can't fit into analyze yet. Judge should not be in analyze. But it may be a matter of interpretation, a nuance of the word. It may be. It is definitely leading up to judging, but it is the whole point of the next activity is to differentiate between looking at something, investigating it, and then being able to judge. Predict. I think that's the first time I've seen predict. I'm not sure. Okay. All right. We're going to move on to the next level. Evaluate. All right. So now, which of these words are evaluate? Yes. Judge. All right. So very often, not quite a synonym, but so closely linked. Judge, judge. Prioritize. Okay. Because isn't that in a way you're classifying in a way of what's more important, what's less important? Okay. Yes, fewer choices, I think, at this level. And then our last one, which of these words would be involved in creating? That highest, in this revised taxonomy, the highest level of cognitive behavior. Design, okay. Aha. Sophia's got the three. Imagine, design, and predict. Design and predict. I love that you're putting, so many of you are putting predict in here. That's great. And illustrate, great. Okay, super. All right, not quite as much variety as in the others, where in the lower level categories of remembering, understanding, and analyzing, I think I saw almost everything in there. All of these words, I think, showed up to some degree, perhaps. But at these higher level behaviors, you're only choosing from 3 or 4, and I think there's a reason for that. Okay, this is a possible set of answers, but take a look at it, and you may immediately say, oh, no, that's completely wrong. I totally disagree with that. And as we said, what is the difference between remember and understand? And can you remember something that you don't understand, especially in language learning? I think you can. You can memorize tons of words without necessarily knowing what they mean. You just have learned the word. You've learned the set of letters. You've learned the sounds, but you may not know what they mean. So trying to distinguish between them. You might be able to take a word and match it to a picture, but not fully understand what the word really means. Understand, I think we saw this progression that many of you are choosing translate for understand. But look at predict. How many of you are you comfortable with predict there in understanding? I'd like you to type that up. So do you agree predict can be understand? What do you think? Any thoughts? Does predict fit into your feeling? Not sure. Okay. Depends on the task. When we mean that for predicting something, we need to understand the pre-context, says Irina. Not really. Because if you understand something, you can predict something new. That's great that you said that. You can predict something new. If you go into the world of Bloom's taxonomy, there's tons of tables and charts where people have put together a whole list of all the kinds of tasks, activities associated with these different categories within the taxonomy. And what's very interesting is how many of these different kinds of activities will show up at in different categories. And predict is one of the most interesting ones. We ask our students to predict all the time, And I think often at this understand stage, we think that, oh, we told you this, therefore you can now predict. But in fact, predicting is a really pretty sophisticated thought process. It involves definitely understanding what you've learned, what you know so far, and then being able to, as Irina said, imagine what can be new. And that's actually a very sophisticated thought process. And yet I do see predict often at the understand level and at the evaluate level and at the create level. And I think we use it in teaching at all of those levels, both in the presentation and our classroom practice, and certainly in assessment as well. Okay. So predict is a really interesting one. And we also need to be sure we're not asking students to predict before we've given them reasonably all the information they need to predict. Or we're just imagining and telling them to guess. You know, what's the difference between guess and predict? Apply, complete, illustrate. I know that I saw some of you put illustrate higher, and I think that makes sense, especially with language teaching and learning. It's certainly contextual. It depends so much on what kind of content you're dealing with at any one moment or topic. Analyze, we have investigate, categorize, and then evaluate, judge, and prioritize. And I think here we want to make that distinction that at analyzing stage, you're not necessarily you're not yet informing the process with your own opinion. You aren't making decisions yet. You are just simply trying to organize to invest, I'm using the words right there, to investigate the data that you have so that you can then move on to the next stage where you're going to judge and prioritize. If you illustrate a word with an example of how it is used, its application. I agree, exactly. If you illustrate with picture, that's creating. Super, super. Okay, so all of this, and that's why I did introduce this activity by saying there are many different answers, and that's the whole point of the activity, to challenge us to realize that these words are not simply one activity. There are many activities depending upon where you place them within your lesson plan. And then up here at create, and we have imagine and design. And as I said before, I do miss that create no longer has that feeling, that sense of synthesis. All right. All right. So taxonomy, Bloom's taxonomy, very useful for us, hopefully, as teachers, that we should occasionally be stepping back and thinking about what are we asking our students to do? Why are we asking them to do it at this stage? Are they ready for it? Where does it fit into the taxonomy of lower and higher order thinking? But we're not probably going to use this with our students unless you're working with university students and education students probably. Though I have been in programs where it has been very much a part of students in all fields of study for them to stop and think about their own learning and their own thinking using Bloom's taxonomy. It can be useful. I don't know if those of you many of you are using it with students outside of education. But we do want students to sometimes be very conscious of their own thinking process, especially if we're training them to be critical thinkers. So this is a model to help students be critical thinkers in a conscious way. And if we train them to do it consciously, then at a certain point it becomes internal. You don't have to stop and think all the time. Am I following the right method? So I call this the DAE, and depending upon if you've been to any of my presentations and at what point you came to that presentation, I did call it by DIE earlier, but I really didn't like the word D. I didn't like using the letters DIE and the obvious extension of that to see the word die. I kind of like to avoid any reference to death if I can. So I adapted it and decided I would call it the DAE approach. The I stood for interpret, and I actually like the word analyze, so I went with describe, analyze, evaluate instead. But I do give credit that it is a method that's used by many people and known instead as the DIE exercise. Okay, so let's move on. It's very simple, and that's the whole point. It's very simple, easy to remember for the students, all right? And they're just simple 3 steps. We're looking at describing something. You introduce a new subject or topic, and if it's visual, what do you see? If it's oral, what do you hear? And at this stage, you're engaging with your topic, your subject, only by what can be observed, objective facts, referring back to our facts, opinion, not sure, activity in the beginning. We really want to make sure that we're understanding the difference between facts, what we can all agree upon, hopefully, if there's anything, I don't know, and everything else. And that we're making clear that we're not analyzing at this stage. And then the second stage is analyze. And with that, you're asking a variety of WH questions about the subject, all of our journalist questions: who, what, when, where, why, how. It's about asking the questions is actually the focus of this, not necessarily getting answers. You may not have answers at all at this stage. You may never have answers about some topics that you bring up. But the asking the questions is a very high cognitive skill, actually, and a very important one, asking questions to explore, to investigate it further. But we want to make sure that even in the asking, we're not really evaluating at this stage. We're gathering data or gathering our own thinking about the topic. Okay, taking a look. Attention, third-year students. This is exactly what you are to do at the exam. Oh, good. I'm glad that this is relevant to some of you. Okay. And E is evaluate. Finally, if you've gone through these steps of just describing, being very objective, and then A, analyzing, then you get to judge, then you get to evaluate. And for the purpose of my use of this activity, it's about evaluating in terms of what you yourself feel and think. So what do you think about this subject and feel about it, having gone first through the simple stages of describing and analyzing. It is important that there are no right or wrong answers as long as they can be supported. You have to be able to some degree, explain why you come to that evaluation. Of course, there are some issues in the world that probably we would argue that's the wrong answer. But hopefully the topics or the way you're presenting these issues are in a way where students can come to the topic with many different points of views, and they're all okay within the context of this activity as long as they can be supported. And maybe students, if they can't support their point of view, then maybe they'll change their point of view. Another part of what we're doing. Okay. All right, so we're going to practice this, all right? And you can do it with images, you can do it with pictures, with videos, you can do it with music. Certainly all of the senses can be applied here. We're somewhat limited by this format, of course, but sky's the limit, I think. But we do want to take it one step at a time, as I try. So while I've been away, what do you see? A boy in the swing, I think. I'm going to interpret somewhat when I see that you're typing fast. And okay, a boy in the swing, a boy on a seesaw. The seesaw, I think, is behind him, or in front of him, rather. Okay, all right, a little bit more. I think you're absolutely right. We see a boy on a swing. Perfect. Okay, thank you, Helena, for saying a boy is waiting for his mom. Can't put that in describe yet. Save that for analyze. Save that for our questions. Okay. He is sad. All right. Is that describe? Is that what we can see objectively? I'm going to challenge you on that, Svetlana. Wearing a pullover and jeans. Perfect. Exactly. What else can we say that we absolutely see? You're absolutely right. I think Svetlana is answering my question. We can predict, but predicting, as we said, is actually a higher level kind cognitive behavior. And we want to first gather some more information before we predict. All of this happens in our brains, of course, within seconds. We describe in our brain, and then we move into analysis and then an evaluation, all within 33 seconds, perhaps. But for this purpose, for this activity, we want to slow it down. Wooden swing, blonde hair. Okay, that's relevant too, because we're going to come back to some other issues about who might this boy be. Colors. Is it snow? Sure. And especially when you use pictures, you may not know, you may not see everything clearly. Okay. I love that, Yevgenia. A boy is shy and he's looking at the other children playing not far from him. I love that. It is not describing. It is definitely already into analysis. Okay, exactly. He has a nice haircut. Super. But I'm not even sure we can say he has a nice haircut, because that to some degree is a evaluative statement. In one culture, even that haircut might be too long. All right. But he has short hair, or his haircut is cut above his ears even. I know I'm overstating the case here, but depending upon the topic, that will become important. All right, let's move on. We've already seen some good analyzing prematurely, but now we're ready for that. So don't think in terms of the answers right now. Think in terms of the questions. So what questions? We see this boy, he's sitting on a swing, he's in jeans and a sweatshirt. He is by himself, you know, which is a nice, even alone sometimes has the sensibility of, oh, and lonely. We don't want to go there yet. But he is in the picture by himself. So who is he waiting for? Well, is he waiting? Wouldn't that even be, is he waiting? Maybe he's where? Okay. Why is he alone? Okay. Perhaps he's not a boy. True. Could be just a boy. A certain haircut signals to us. Imagine if could be put a ponytail on that person and it becomes a girl in the 21st century. Good point. Okay. What is he looking at? Okay. Why is he not swinging? Great, exactly. On a swing, but not swinging. I think that's probably sand. I think you're all in winter in Russia and you're jumping to snow, but I think it's actually probably sand, not snow. How is he feeling? Okay. All right, especially you're focusing in on the sense of he's alone, and therefore, where is everyone? Why isn't he with anyone? What is he thinking about? Good. Because think about it. He's sitting, it's been a very, very busy day, and he's thinking about what is mom making him for lunch? Or he's thinking about why didn't any of my friends come to the playground today? Very different possibilities. Well, why can we see his back and not his face? That's interesting, but that has more to do with the photographer, right, than the boy, than the subject. But even that might be really important. That actually is the first time I've heard that question, and therefore thought the implications of that everything any bit of data such as this is informed by the choices made by the person who created that data. So the photographer has chosen to show the back of this boy and not the front of this boy. Okay, great. Now, so we've talked about he's alone. What is he thinking about? Do we have any feeling about this? All right. And it's a simple picture. I know I'm not expecting a lot, but what do you think? He ran away. Great. Okay. So any feeling though? How did this picture make you feel? You want to help him. Great. Okay. You thinking about those parents. Obviously, I think a lot of you are parents or just well socialized. Okay. Feel sympathy for him. He is an introvert and shy. And if you think of it in those terms, you might then think, well, I'm an introvert and shy too. So what's the problem? I like to sit by myself. He's okay, thoughtful. Okay. This is a very, very simple picture with almost no visual cues to really feed off of. But imagine instead if we give you this picture, all right, which actually is the picture that some of you seem to be seeing, right? It's almost like the picture beyond the picture I actually showed you. So again, we have the back of a boy all by himself. By himself. They all already sort of gives some more value to the statement. He's by himself, just sitting there, but now we see a whole lot of other boys or young people that he's not part of. Okay. So we're going to run out of time. I have a lot more to show you, so I'm not going to go through this with any more. But imagine going through the same process with a picture which has indeed more information in it. So now you do indeed have that context that I think you all wanted from the beginning. And if you go through it, the same process, just describing a boy sitting, other children standing, moving in the opposite direction, and trying to use language that is not at all evaluative, but just description. All right. Okay. There, I see Irina saying he has problems with his legs. That would be part of the analyzing process, that you'd actually want to ask a question. Why isn't he with those other children? Well, they don't like him. There's a problem with his legs. He doesn't like them. Who knows? Okay. He is sick. Absolutely. Okay. And some of these more culturally specific, the better. All right. Here's this is great. Thank you, Svetlana. This boy is waiting for his younger brother who's playing. That's right. He's just there. He's not part of this group. He doesn't want to be part of this group. He's just waiting for his brother. Super. It's a girl. Once again, we're jumping to, I did, for some reason, some kind of assumption about gender. He's being punished. Very good. So what isn't in the picture? The teacher over in the background saying, you can't play with the children today because X, Y, Z. Maybe he just got tired. Exactly. Teacher said, if you're tired, just sit down. You can join them in 5 minutes. Okay. He's been hurt. Super. So you see, with a picture with this much more information, what you can generate is moving beyond maybe a first reaction of, oh, these boys, sorry, I think I'm still broadcasting, okay. That's interesting. With his hood on his head, he looks like an outsider. Very good point. Just the assumptions that we make, even about something as simple as a hood, which it's cold out, but then we see the other children with just their t-shirts on, so we are going to probably automatically think the hood is something more than about I'm cold. He's a loser. Well, that's interesting. That's very much of a valuative word, as different from a loner, a loser. Okay, great. Simple picture, so many different kinds of possibilities here. And that's part of the point, to explore that and especially with something rather simple and non-threatening as this picture. Okay. He's actually their PT trainer. It's just a very small, it's a very relatively small but lithe and athletic woman, all right, who is watching them perhaps. Okay, we're going to move on. So that's what you can do with a very simple picture. You mentioned more culturally specific, and I know Andy Noonan last week was talking all about culture especially, and the importance of thinking about your own culture before you move into cross-cultural discussions. You need to be just fully aware of the of thinking of your own culture as well. So we have the Russian izba. You could go through the process with this. Describe it without analyzing it at all, such as abandoned. Okay, excuse me. Abandoned feels factual, but even it's not. It has some valuative quality to it as well. Excuse me, I'm gonna get. Okay, super. I see some of you are doing a very good job at just describing. All right, a hole in the roof, glass in the windows are broken, but then we have lonely and old. Okay, so it's hard to do within this chat box setting, but the whole point of the activity when you're doing it with your students is really make sure that they understand the difference between describe, analyze, and evaluate. Okay, I'm going to keep moving on. So much still I want to do in the last 20 minutes that I have with you. Then you have perhaps cross-cultural. So it's this time of year, right? In here, we're just barely a week away, just a few days away from a Western Christmas. And thinking about that, what do people think about Christmas in the United States? Okay, wonderful spirit of New Year. Okay. So I also thought it might lend itself to some discussion of the differences between the traditions of the United States Christmas and Russian New Year, okay, and the similarities in our iconic images and activities and personages, and the differences as well. Okay, all right. And I'm going to not take a chance with video, having had little luck with the polls. So instead, I'm just going to tell you about doing this with video, and you will have at the end a link to a Euronews no comment clip. As you might know, with no comment, there's literally no narrative that goes with it, and you just see a lot of images. And so I'm going to have you think about describe, analyze, and evaluate, and let's just describe the pictures that I'm showing you, which are excerpted from the video. Okay, so just describing. What are you seeing? Just describing. What do you see? I would be careful about the rich girl's puppy. All right, careful. That might already be an analyze. I have one or two more. Okay. Pets, funny, already a little bit analysis, or certainly your own opinion. Good, okay, Melissa's got it. Oh, hi, Melissa. That's a fellow, isn't it? Hi. Pets traveling with owners. Traveling, okay. I don't know if they're traveling. So you see there's quite a variety of pets. We've had a tortoise, we've had a hamster, cat, dog. So it's not a animal specific. All right, Yevgeny is urging me to try the video. We'll try it very quickly.
Mira, mira para allá. Mira para allá. Ay, va, qué chula. Preciosa. Es rusa.
Okay, great. So I'm seeing we had good description, and I'm seeing some analysis, basically in response to what kinds of questions we might ask. Pets market, zoo hospital, meeting of pet lovers, pet show, exhibition, line to the veterinarian, pets waiting for the plane or the train. People you met someone else to talk about traveling with them. We have blessing animals, pets, church, I think is probably what we have there. Okay. All right. A lot of people are guessing pets, church, crazy people. Okay. So with crazy people, we've kind of gone from analysis into our evaluate, haven't we? Okay. All right. Well, we had some very interesting responses to this. In an activity with students, we really do want to hone in on the difference between describe, analyze, and evaluate. But let's take a look and see what your reaction is to the next part. I'm sorry, let me close it. So, I hope you caught that. See? Evgeny, have I lost my, did I close everything down? Did I lose my presentation?
Ay, va, qué chula. Preciosa. Es rusa. Se llama 7. Mira, esta es la peor publicidad que podemos.
Por mediación de San Antón recibe esta bendición. Buena bendición. Por mediación de
I was talking for a while and then belatedly realized I had disappeared. So pets are being blessed. It's St. Francis in the United States. They do it on St. Francis of Assisi name day or Saint's Day. And what do you think about that? Okay. Someone is talking about cat wants to be an atheist according to his eyes. What kind of religion is it? It's Catholicism, I'm assuming in Spain. However, they do it in the United States, both in Catholic Church, but some other churches as well. Okay. Live and learn, exactly. What I found is that actually in a country like Russia with some very specific kind of Christian ability, that Russians have actually some interesting reactions. We're not having much luck technologically today. Can you hear me? You can hear me. Okay, well, I'm having a very, I can, the odd thing is, okay, I'm back. All right. All right, I know I'm about to run out of time. Yevgeny, Nastya, can I go over 10 minutes or should I pretty much absolutely finish in 10 minutes? I'm going to keep moving along just so I can introduce you to the other activities that I do. I have something called Your Point of View. Great, I'll go 10 more minutes, 10 minutes beyond. your point of view, which I borrowed from an ad campaign from HSBC, which is a big international bank. They had a wonderful ad campaign 6 years ago. And I borrowed the images, as you're about to see, and have used it in a project work that I do with students. So what words would you associate with this picture? I'm seeing wedding, new family, okay. Bride, happy, okay, happy. Wedded bliss, good. Cake. And now we're moving away from our describe, analyze, interpret. You can definitely, any kinds of words that come to mind. Prisoners forever, thank you, Alexei. Here we're getting into some challenging perspectives. Okay, anything else? Other words that you might associate, really plumb the depths when you think about young people, any people getting married. What comes? Noble. Yes, that's great. I like that, Irina. What else? Anything else about this activity of getting married? Disappointment. Okay. Responsibility. Future enemies. Okay. Great white dress. It is indeed. It's a killer dress. Hopeful. Old, new, barred and blue. Yes, that's a nice tradition. Okay, so you've got the idea, and I've seen a little bit of those that go beyond the somewhat obvious of, oh, white dress, marriage, etc. So this is how the ad worked. The ad campaign worked. That they showed this picture 3 times, but with a different word attached. So fate and fear and fairy tale. And I love how they did this, so that they created an alliteration of words, all of them nouns, but actually evoking some very different feelings about this thing called getting married. That is, it's fate. Even that is somewhat challenging, because is fate a good thing, or is fate a, oh, what am I going to do? It's my fate. Got to marry him. Don't have any other choices. Fear. Well, those of us who have been married, I'm sure we were very hopeful and excited, but you'd be sort of stupid not to be a little afraid. And fairy tale too, as we know, that so much about fairy tales is full of challenges, but the fairy tale ending that we all are well, certainly in Western culture, we're brought up to believe in, how realistic is that anyhow? So this is part of this project, taking one picture and trying to evoke different points of view about it, or different reactions to it. Okay. All right. And then they had another, a related campaign, but different. And in this case, what happened? Slide is keep coming and going with you. So we're on this new activity. All right, one word, 3 meanings. What image would you use to illustrate the word accomplishment? A mother with a newborn baby, child, super. Okay, what else? And try to really imagine different kinds of things. Handshake, super. So maybe some kind of negotiation, an agreement, diplomatic, business. A graduate, a sportsman crossing the finish line, great. Nobel Prize. Planting a tree, I love that. That's great. Not quite sure what the cum is. Certificate for webinars, you're absolutely right. Okay. A happy traveler to India, super. Finishing university, lots of education, obviously we're all educators. A newly built house, great. So you see, each of those is a different person showing what they value in their lives as an accomplishment. Space explorer, so much bigger picture kind of accomplishment. Okay. Super, lots of things. Okay, I'm going to keep moving on because I'm going to run out of time. I apologize. This is what they did. I hope you can see these well enough. So accomplishment, we have over on the far left, a beauty queen, all right, winning the crown of some kind of beauty contest, which to some people is no accomplishment at all, and to some it is exactly what they set out to do. And then we have the moon landing. Most of us think it is real, an amazing accomplishment of mankind, of humankind. And then something as simple and wonderful as a child learning how to tie his or her own shoes, though I guess children don't grow up tying shoes anymore. They have slip-ons and Velcro and the rest of it. But it certainly is an amazing accomplishment for the child as well as the parent or whoever taught that child to tie his or her own shoes. So these are accomplishments, they are achievements. Of course, we might think of them with different language. So with students, I take much more time with them in going through this introduction of the activity, and then we practice it. So we have this one big picture, and we try to think of 3 words that express different points of view. So it's not black, big, and shiny. That's more or less one point of view and also very factual. We really want to think of the 3 very different people seeing this picture and thinking of this vehicle and having different reactions, different points of view. So richness, cool, 4-wheel drive, okay. But who else? Imagine very different people standing and looking at this car and having different reactions, different thoughts. Speed and safety, well-being, okay. And what can help in teasing this process out is to imagine if somebody says speed and safety, does everybody think speed and safety together? Would you have a different reaction to the idea of speed? Ah, good. Nikita has already he's come up with 3 of them. Nice car, waste of money, and good deal. Okay, good. Cash, lucky, speed. Okay. Safety, status, pollutant. Super, Sophia, you kind of got it. Okay. Move, discover, enjoy. Dream, impossible. Senselessness. Great. Luxury, freedom, pollution. Wonderful. Okay. I see that you've got it in spite of my rushing you through the process. Especially I see a lot of you succeeding in having the same word class, which is really helpful with this. Powerful, elegant, comfortable. Ugly. Okay. So ideally this process works very, very well in teamwork, pairs and small groups especially. Let's look very quickly at trying to do it with this. Now we're looking at the second way, the second add system. So we have the word is diversity. So here we're thinking of 3 different images that express 3 different points of view or experiences about that word. In the same way that we had the beauty queen, the moon landing, and tying one's shoes. So let's try to think of 3 images that show very different points of view of diversity. This one's hard. I'm not sure myself. Food, dress, fashion. Okay. Food and dress. I think dress and fashion are sort of similar, aren't they? Okay, great. Clothes of different nations, different races, especially, it's important to talk about races. So in the right context, in the right environment, sweet chocolate, sour lemon, bitter mustard, that's super. Okay. People, flora, fauna. Okay. Religion, tastes, and views. Okay. And here, what I would challenge you is what image would do that? So you'd have a picture, or maybe you're talking about 3 different religions, 3 different tastes, I'm not quite sure. Because the challenge of this is going to be going out and finding a picture that actually represents these broader categories that you're mostly putting up here. Okay, chicken, bread, milk, brown sky, moon. Okay, this one's hard, and it takes a lot of time, and it may be the final project once you practice this much more. So if any of you actually do this, I'd love to hear about it if you use this at all with diversity. What I'd like to do in wrapping up is showing you a little bit how I use this with a very charming little video from Storyline Online, a wonderful set of illustrated books that have been narrated by popular or famous, or in some cases past famous actors in the United States. And this one, I'm not going to tell you very much about it because we want to see it a little bit first and then talk about it later. So again, we're kind of combining principles of DAE and Bloom's taxonomy in thinking about getting young children to use critical thinking, even with at relatively young ages, and also even limited language skills perhaps. So I'm going to show you a little bit of a video and stop a couple of times to ask you some questions to elicit our critical thinking. So let's see if this one works as well as the other one. Okay, yes.
An egg was rolling on the ground. It rolled through the trees. It rolled across the meadow. It rolled all the way down the hill. Finally, it rolled into a duck's nest. Mother Duck didn't notice. She was reading.
Okay, so we might stop at this point.
Soon
And
enough,
here I'm going to belabor the point of the difference between predicting and guessing.
The first
At this point, all we can
duckling
do
to
is sort of
hatch.
guess. We don't know
Blue
very much.
spots.
So what
Mother
is that
Duck
egg?
called him
Any ideas
Crayon.
what that egg might be?
The second
Not a
duckling
egg,
had
so
brown stripes.
what do you think is going to come out of that
Zebra.
egg? Any guesses?
Mother Duck decided. The third duckling was yellow, and Mother Duck named him Moonlight. A rather odd-looking duckling
I don't see any
hatched
guesses yet about what's
from the
inside
fourth
that egg.
Googie, Googie, he said, and that became his name.
Don't know what Strauss is. That's interesting. I see that Natasha doesn't
Mother
like the
Duck
cartoon
taught her
so far.
4 ducklings how to swim, how to dive,
Okay, something
and
to
how
do with
to
the ugly swan.
waddle.
Okay.
Googie Googie always
All right,
learned
an
more
ostrich.
quickly
All right,
than
so we're
the
just kind of
others.
guessing, taking
He
a
was
moment
bigger
to check
and
to some
stronger
degree
too.
about comprehension.
But no matter
and
how
what
quick
we've
they
seen
were,
so far.
or
All
what
right,
they looked
and
like,
moving
Mother
on.
Duck
We'll look a little
loved
bit
all
more
her
at it, so let's
ducklings
go. Somebody's
the
saying the
same.
video is on. Do you mean it's actually playing for you? I've stopped it, and now I'm going to keep going. Okay.
Then, one terrible day, 3 crocodiles came out of the lake. They looked a lot like Googie Googie. The crocodiles were smiling, and when they laughed with their mouths wide open, the whole world could see their big pointed teeth. The 3 crocodiles saw Googie Googie and smiled some more. Look at that ridiculous crocodile. He's walking like a duck. Googie Googie heard them. I'm not walking like a duck. I am a duck, he explained.
All right, I'm gathering maybe that this technique has not worked and the video is just playing in
The crocodiles laughed.
So I'm just going to keep playing to the end and
Look
we'll
at
wrap up.
yourself. No feathers, no beak, no big webbed feet. What you have is blue-gray skin, sharp claws, pointed teeth, and the smell of bad crocodile. Just like us. The first crocodile said, your blue-gray body lets you hide underwater without being seen, so you can get close to fat, delicious ducks. The second crocodile said, big, sharp claws help you hold fat, delicious ducks tightly so they don't get away. Third crocodile said, pointed teeth are necessary so you can chew fat, delicious ducks. Mmm, yum. The three crocodiles grinned. We know you live with the ducks. Take them to the bridge tomorrow and practice diving. We'll wait underneath with our mouths wide open. Why would I do that? Gucci Gucci asked. Why should I listen to you? Because we are all crocodiles, and crocodiles help each other. The bad crocodiles grinned again and vanished into the grass. Gucci Gucci felt terrible. He sat
I think we need to wind up. Let me take a moment to tell you a little bit. So we had, I think, I'm not quite sure how much of the video you all saw on the most interesting place. I'm not sure if that's about the story, but I'm going to go to, we had Guji Guji, who's this crocodile who's born into a duckling family and mama duck and duckling family. And he learns how to walk and to waddle and to swim with all the other ducklings. And it doesn't seem to bother anybody that he's not a duckling. He's just one of the family. Mother duck treats him the same as she does all of her other ducklings. But one day, some big grown-up crocodiles show up, and they're interested in Guji Guji, and they watch him, and they think he's very, very funny because he's acting as if he's a duck. He walks like he's a duck. And Guji Guji says, I'm not walking like a duck, I am a duck. And that's where I stop in this process, especially because I love that use of I'm not like something, I am something, which I think is in itself is a lovely little piece of linguistic difference and also a very profound point of one's point of view of who am I, and I declare who I am, and also the difference between nature and nurture. And at this point, I go into with teachers as I'm training them to use this wonderful story, Guji Guji. We then talk about the different ways to apply Bloom's revised taxonomy of cognitive behavior to this very simple childhood story. Certainly a fairy tale of a crocodile in a family of ducks. I'm going to leave it to you to track it down, to go and look at the rest of the story. It's quite charming. But all these things that we can do with this kind of video, which are about critical thinking. So you start with what do you see, and then what happens, our understanding, our not remembering, but basically understanding, and then predicting or guessing what is going to happen next, and asking all of our whys and whos and whats and wheres. And then once we've asked the questions and to some degree analyzed our own answers to them, we can get to that evaluation and create stage. So what is the message of the story? How does the story make you feel? Writing an ending for the story and acting out the ending of the story, as well as, of course, viewing the rest of the story as well, which you can easily do by finding it online. So where to download this video? It's powerful. I'm so sorry we didn't have a smoother presentation of this, but I'm glad some of you liked it. And what I'm going to do is now share with you all of the links that are here, and I'm going to put them in the chat box, my email and the PowerPoint. the Euronews Madrid clip and this Guji Guji. And one, we have Storyline Online, where you can find many other wonderful children's illustrated stories narrated, and also the YouTube that I use. And you notice that it stopped every now and then. I did that on purpose as a pause technique. So let me now give you some of this information, and we'll wrap up. So here is my email, everybody. Just cutting this in. Okay, that's my email. Happy to hear from any and all of you. You've been very, very patient. Sorry the technical bits and pieces didn't work quite as smoothly as I'd like. Thank you so much for your contributions. Really appreciate your sharing your reactions and thoughts. Let's see, okay, that's my PowerPoint presentation. Okay, there is the that first YouTube is the Madrid, and here is Storyline Online with many wonderful stories, including Guji Guji. And here's one here. And if not, I'm happy to send you anything and everything if you simply write to me at th.in.tesol@hotmail.com. And I know we had to rush through a lot of that, but hopefully it piqued your interest. And if you go to the presentation, perhaps you'll be able to use some of that in your own classroom work. I also find that the Guji Guji works just as well with college students as it does young learners. So I thank you all very, very much, especially for staying with me an extra 10 minutes. Is that it, Nastya and Yevgeny? Do we just say bye for now? Thank you all very much for your nice comments. I appreciate it. I know Andy said this last week as well, but I miss Russia all the time, and I especially miss working with all of you. Being the fellow in Russia and Moscow area was just the most wonderful time of my life. Miss you all very, very much, and we'll be happy to visit you again another time. Okay. Super. You're all very, very nice. Thanks. Please do write if you'd like any more information about any of this. Oh, we hope you'll return. I would love to